welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod. So today I thought I would try something a little bit different and take that video I have of the Caracal and slow it down to be about a 15-minute run and then talk through what I was doing so that you can kind of see a slower version of how I fully design something. I can't really do it live or show something live because it takes me too long. It takes me, hours to do one. So I thought this might be a way to kind of see how that goes. Um, yeah, let's get started. All right, so here I just started drawing the Caracal. And as you can see, I'm working on black and I'm using the purple because the Caracal doesn't have purple in it. And I'm just trying to make sure that everything's right now. As you'll see as I draw it, I do change my mind in a few places. I'll refine the eyes a bit. And try to make sure that everything's even. One of the reasons I think my videos are so jerky when I do these is I'm always going in or out and changing my mind. But you saw that I did change like one of the edge of the face on one side to try and match the other side. But if you take a look at it when it's back, I still don't think I fully got them even. And I'm fixing the eyes there. And some of these markings are transitions from fur color. So when I start doing this, I add kind of the first layer of the fur, and I still kind of consider this a sketch. So all this is really helping me do is line up the direction that the fur is going to go so that I can make sure that, it kind of makes the most sense. When I start really applying the pin pressure, I don't have to think about, gosh, what direction is the fur going in this specific spot? Like I know what direction the fur is going because I've already sketched it out here. So this allows me to really think about what I'm doing, and you'll see multiple instances where I'm constantly like laying down and then taking back a whole chunk where I think maybe something's not quite right, and sort of fixing something. I also really like to take a look at it without the drawing layer on, so you'll see me doing that a lot. I often do it a lot. I might have been, because I was mindful that I was recording here, I might have been more careful on how often I try to pop that on and off, because I like to get a sense of how it looks without the drawing layer on it. I need to see how it's going to look without that purple in place. Now when I'm adding these lines, what I'm doing, right, is like I have two lines here, and then I would add another one that's sort of in between, and so on and so forth. That's how I stagger the fur when I'm drawing it. It's how I draw hair, is you want to stagger those lines to make it look more natural. And you could see just a moment ago I undid like a whole section and then reapplied it because I didn't like how I was doing it. I have these lines coming up from his face, from his little, I don't know, his lip, I guess. And I had to sort of decide what direction I thought the hair would go once it passed that point, and make sure that it all kind of makes sense. So it takes a while. This step actually takes quite a while to do, because I'm constantly changing my mind. I'm constantly sort of shifting things around and making sure that it all looks, right. Basically that I think the fur's all kind of going in the right way and it's mirrored on either side. But it's so important to how I do it. So it's vital to making sure I have it right so that I can actually like layer it up when I'm ready to. And then I'm going to switch and add the white. And again, now I'm trying to make sure that the lines from the white make sense not only with themselves, but with the kind of brownish, orangish color I already have. So they need to kind of line up. And sometimes when I'm switching color like that, they don't, and so I'll have to readjust what I'm doing just a little bit. Now, Caracal has really tight kind of fur, so it's not going to be loose and scraggly, but all animals kind of follow the same rule. It's something I've noticed after doing, drawing for a long time. The first of which is that the hair on the nose tends to be a lot shorter than the hair everywhere else, especially if or even if it's a long-haired animal. The hair on the nose is going to be nice and short. Now, that's true most of the time, but it's not true 100% of the time. So it is something I always sort of look and check on, but you can see on this drawing the hair by the nose is shorter, because 9 times out of 10 it is shorter. So it's there's just certain rules like that you get used to the more you do it. You find these certain patterns. And now I'm layering on the highlights. As I do it, it's not something I have to mark out, but I have learned that it is definitely one of those things that gets easier. So I usually add shadows and highlights with a light source above and in front of. I've talked about that in one of the previous videos. And it's easier for me to add shadows and highlights dynamically and change them kind of on the fly with that in mind, with a light source coming from above and to either the right or the left. And if I change those rules, I actually have to put a lot more effort into sort of thinking through how I'm going to add shadows and highlights, because I'm no longer doing it in a way that I'm used to. So even though I do it with different animals all the time, when you get used to a certain sort of location of your highlights and shadows, it's just one of those things, you develop that muscle memory. I know how to do that without really thinking about it, no matter what animal it is, because I know how to draw, a snout coming forward or a snout being pushed into the face or whatever it is with those rules. And so anytime it's shifted, it takes more effort to sort of think it through. Now you'll notice that I added highlights all the way up to the edge, and then I didn't, and now I'm adding this very light, I'm lessening my pin pressure for the edge, because you're not going to see even if light source is in front of the animal, it's the side that it's on still isn't going to be in full highlight. There's going to be a little bit of shadowing as it comes down and around the corner of that edge. And then here I changed my mind over where I thought the white went. So it was and I think I got it wrong, and that's why I changed it. And then as I go to the other side, I'll start feathering that out. And again, all I'm really doing is I'm just very lightly, I'm not changing my brush size. You can see in the corner it still says 15. I don't know if you can see it. I don't know if it's big enough, but in the corner it still says 15. So I haven't changed my brush size. It's just a matter of, putting less pin pressure onto what I'm doing so that I can get this very, a more shadowed look, but with the same color, with the same pin pressure. I don't have to change it. And when I'm feathering out like that, it's easier for me to control the highlights and shadows. So when I'm just layering on a strong highlight, it's actually a lot harder for me to feather that out sort of immediately. So if I know I'm coming to a transition spot, I will often just start feathering it, and then I can build the highlights on top of that. And you can see I kept making changes over how I was going to do the black strip on a Caracal's head. And I don't leave it this way either, so I change my mind again. So drawing black is actually something that I'm always constantly evolving how I do, because I design on a black background, and ultimately, as a t-shirt designer, a lot of these are going to end up on t-shirts, and they need to be able to show up on, my standard colors are black, dark gray, heather green or heather forest, purple, maroon, those sorts of colors. And designing on black means all of this will show, and navy. Black and navy, I won't have any issues. Where the problem is going to be with whatever black choice I have is going to be on the dark gray heather or the heather forest colors. That's where I have a chance to really lose it. And so I have to be careful there. You can see, just as a sidebar, I was feathering out the shadows. Under the eye opposite to the light source, you can see that I added some highlights there, and then I feathered out the highlight on his forehead, and I actually added a burst of highlight on the opposite side of his lip, the side away from the shadow, because all of that would catch highlight. And now I'm adding the white. But I'll do the same thing with the white when I get to that side. I don't know that I'm going to do it right here. Yeah, I am. So I'm going to add a little burst of light, because it's still going to be catching that light. The nose is kind of flush to their face. And so that front part of that cheek, like you were going to have one side with the light source on it, but that other side's still going to be catching the light just a little bit. So that's what I was doing there. Now on the chin, I tend to always draw an animal chin lightly like this. I don't put a lot of pin pressure, because as I mentioned earlier, the lighter the pin pressure, the more control I have over it. So once I do that, I then have a lot of control over adding the highlight and making sure that I'm doing that right, because the way the chin goes, it's got that bulge, so it's going to feather out as it comes over, and I just want to make sure I do it right, which is why I do it that way. But with designing on black, you know, and my ultimate canvas being a t-shirt, I have to make sure that it works. And so the danger with choosing a color that's too dark is it's not going to show up. And the danger of choosing a color that's too light is it's going to look like gray, or, you know, that the animal isn't black. And so where I can, I love to leave black as just the black, doing nothing to it and allowing the canvas, if you will, whatever color that is, the black, the navy, the heather forest, like to show through, and that becomes the black, and it'll read that way. But in some cases, if there's information, and in this case I had to, because his eyes were one in particular that I couldn't get away from, you know, there's too much information that I still needed to present with the black, and so I had to add just that little bit. So I change how I do it every time. And in this case, I was experimenting with taking a sort of mid-tone gray, which is typically the gray I will use when I'm drawing black, and sort of sparsing out how thick the lines are, so that I don't have to, so that it can still read as black, I guess. You know, it still reads as black, but it's there and you can see it. And then I added in the drawing to get the whiskers and the ears all set. Ears can be relatively easy. And then the nose. So the nose always, usually is pinkish in color. So I'll add the nose and then I'll do the highlights and the shadows for the nose. You can see I'm adding it there, but I leave the, as the nose rounds down into the nostril, I leave it lighter. I'm putting less pin pressure because it's going to round down away from the light source. And then the same as the nose comes down, that downward section is going to do the same. And now I'm going to add the hair for the ear. So when I'm not doing the big fluffy parts of the ear, when I'm doing a little bit of the little hair that I'm doing there, it can be a little bit more tedious because I'm not putting a lot of pin pressure, because it's not going to want to interfere with the white. And you can see I'm flashing on and off the underdrawing. But adding the actual fluff of the ear is pretty easy. It's just sort of this burst of hair, and it's longer, so it's quick, which is nice. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, this nice long quick hair. Now when I shadow it, you know, I'll shadow it based on my light source. So the ear that we're shadowing now, which is it's his left ear on his right side, the tips of that are going to be in highlight, and that back side's going to be in shadow. But when we flip to the other ear, it's actually going to be the middle is where I found the sweet spot to be. So the tips will be in shadow, and the part that connects back to the ear will be in shadow because it's sort of going back inside the ear, and the middle of it is what's going to be in highlight. I'm always careful with the ears because you can over highlight them, especially because often ear tufts or the ear hair in a cat is typically white. It's not always, but often in animals it's white. And so that can overpower something. And so I'm always careful about layering up my highlights here so that I'm not overdoing it all at once and suddenly the only thing you see are the ears. I'm sort of I'll lightly add that in by layers. That's why I filled in all of that white first. As I mentioned, that not only does that give me more control, but I can control how much pin pressure I'm adding in to do the different things here. And then I'm going to lightly fill in the rest of that that hair and the interior part of the ear, because I want it to appear like it's going into black, and so I don't want to do too much, but I need to put something there. And then I'm going to go back to the other ear. Am I going to do it yet? Yeah. And feather that out more because that's the side in highlight, so that might pick up a little bit more. And then the eye. So I had an eye color, and you can see that I wasn't 100% happy with it. I kind of kept fiddling with that to make it a little bit more yellow, even though I'd already decided one. Because I'll take my time sort of deciding colors. And you can also see, you can see it on the eye I just did. My strokes aren't very strong when I come underneath, right? Like there's certain ways that I draw that, certain angles that's a lot easier for me to draw than other angles. And you can see I kept changing this as well. I didn't feel like he was looking at me, and so I kept readjusting until I got happy with it. But so my lines become very, very unstable, but that's okay. It doesn't matter with this style. It can still work. Now this is also an example of changing an expression, right? So I'm doing this, and then I have to feather out that edge, as we've talked about how to draw eyes. But you can see I come up just a little higher on his eye to make him look a little bit more eager. So the lower that would have been, the less eager he would have looked. He would have looked a little bit more stoic, a little bit more neutral. So by filling in more of the top of his eye, he looks a little bit more awake, a little bit more eager, not happy or I mean, almost happy, but not sort of, dazed at us or a neutral expression. It definitely gives him an expression. Now for the ear tufts here, again, this was black, so it's another reason why I had to actually color in his black spots here. And I'm just sort of winging it. On the other one, I had to keep changing it. And even on this one, you can see I keep changing my mind. Because I'm not drawing any longer to sketch, I'm sort of winging it. And then I'm going to add a little burst of highlight so it's seeable. And then again on that side. And then the last thing I'm going to do is sign it. All right, so that was drawing a Caracal. Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you have any questions or concerns, drop them down in the comments as well. I think the little box was maybe a little bit in the way for the Caracal, but I have a quicker version on YouTube. I can link the really sped up version that's only like a couple minutes, I think it is, down in the description below. And if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you all next Thursday. Thank you so much.